So the folks that I polled on X yesterday said they were stoked by the earnings call. Something like 60+% were stoked, and another 28% were happy. That's a pretty good result. I think I wish I got that kind of result all the time. So that's Elon was in a very, very good mood. What do you think, Cern was?
Yeah, we learned yesterday, Randy, that when Elon tweets or posts a lot the day of the earnings call,
Yes,
that's a really good sign. That's an
good sign.
indication of his mood. So in the future, that's going to be a key
Oh,
trading metric
there you
for
go.
anybody.
There you go. That's right.
Yeah,
We'll
not
have to,
investment advice, by the way. Yeah.
yes, right. Yeah. So it was good, but a good earnings call.
Well, depends on your point of view.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm here to throw a bucket of cold water, Randy, on your stoked comment.
oh, I see.
But then we'll go from there and we'll talk about some good stuff.
All right. Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
will. I will provide you with clapbacks if I think they're deserving. So,
That sounds good. All
all right.
right. Well, first of all, something really important happened yesterday.
Uh-oh.
This is a picture of a Cybertruck in Italy.
Aha.
This was the most important thing I saw about Tesla all day long.
So the one in Italy does not have a license plate on it.
No, no, it doesn't. When you're the only one, you don't need a license plate.
I see. Yeah. Everybody knows who owns it.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, here's from the Tesla Europe and Middle East account. Cybertruck celebrating its first birthday on vacation in the Dolomites.
Nice.
So that seems like a pretty good place to go. Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. So sorry, I have to throw some Cybertruck
Oh, absolutely.
photos in
No,
there.
that's
Whatever excuse I can. All right. Let's start with the bucket of cold water, shall we?
all right. Sure.
All right. Tesla's change in 12-month revenue,
Hmm.
zero. It's not a growth company.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
Yep.
Tesla's change in 12-month net income, eh, under 20%,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Not not showing a whole lot of growth.
No.
Certainly decelerating at this point,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
All right. And as I predicted yesterday, this was, I made a post. I said tomorrow's headline today.
Okay.
Tesla's earnings fall 73%.
73. Yeah.
Now, the green bar was last year's fourth quarter, sorry, 2 years ago, fourth quarter, 2023.
Hmm.
They had a $6 billion one-time tax asset that was recognized. So that boosted their earnings quite a bit.
Right.
And this year they had $589 million of Bitcoin realized gains
Right.
that boosted the $2.3 billion number. So both of those numbers were boosted,
Hmm.
but the boost that happened 2 years ago was higher than the one for this last quarter. Anyway, so that looks pretty bad,
Yeah.
right? Big drop in earnings.
Right.
By the way, here's the Bitcoin disclosure.
Ah.
They now have a billion, about 1.1 billion in Bitcoin.
Hmm.
We now know the number of coins, 11,509.
Okay.
There's some information going out around out there that they had 9,000 something, but it's actually over 11,000.
Hmm.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. From an operating cash flow perspective, things don't look quite as bleak.
Hmm.
This was the third highest quarter of operating cash flow.
Nice.
And that strips out gains on Bitcoin, that strips out the gain on the tax asset. This is just the operating business.
Right.
Okay. So things don't look terrible.
Hmm.
You can kind of see that things are growing, although there's, fits and starts along the way.
Right. Right.
Q1 last year being a real difficult quarter.
Hmm.
Um, and then here is the quarterly free cash flow.
Hmm.
So not bad,
Right.
positive,
Right.
couple $1 billion of free cash.
Yeah.
Now,
After a big capital expense.
yeah, and so I wanted to mention that because free
Okay.
cash is the money that you have left over after you invest in your business in terms of CapEx.
Hmm.
And as we know, Tesla is investing heavily in its business, particularly on the compute side.
Hmm.
And so the fact that they still have free cash in what's been a very difficult market for selling vehicles and making these massive investments actually is pretty impressive.
Right.
Okay. All right. Let's continue with the buckets of cold water, shall we? They're going to come at you pretty fast here.
All right. No, so I was going to just back up for 1 second though and say
Yeah.
that the free cash flow also though, uh, one element that is impacting that would be the inventory, a lot of inventory reduction.
Yes.
So this would not necessarily be free cash flow that could be duplicated in quarter 1 because they're probably going to increase inventory in well, or maybe flatten one and increase in two, something like that.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. There is some sort of one-time inventory reduction benefits in Q4 that we may not see this quarter. It may actually go the other way.
Right.
Sure. Yep. And that's why looking at quarterly numbers sometimes is not so great. It's better to look at, trailing 12 months
Right.
to kind of really see what's going on.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about margins. If I'm an auto analyst on Wall Street, I care about auto gross margins.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes they look at the total gross margin, the blue line,
Mhm.
and that went down pretty severely last quarter.
Mhm.
And a lot of analysts will strip out the regulatory credits, so the gray
Right.
line.
Mhm.
So either way, whichever number you care to look at, they both went down pretty severely last quarter, and it's the lowest number that we've seen really since 2018.
Right.
So that's not so great, particularly after Q3 last year, where things were looking better,
Right.
and that's proved to be temporary. Okay, at least based on this last quarter of data.
Right.
All right. The other thing is Tesla has three lines of business. The auto business, the blue line.
Mhm.
The green line, energy, the margins have been going up, but last quarter dropped quite a bit, uh, back down to 25%. Still pretty strong, but nonetheless a drop. When I think a lot of analysts, including us, I think we're hopeful that that 30% number would stick
Right.
or even go higher over time, which it may still do. Again, this is just one quarter. And then the red line, which is the services and other business, the supercharging and the maintenance on vehicles and used car sales and that kind of thing, that also saw a drop in its margins.
Right.
So pretty rough quarter as far as that goes for all three business lines.
Yeah, I think that they might have said something about the services and others regarding used car sales. So used car sales is a pretty big dollar amount of this component.
Yeah.
In used car sales, I believe they said, I didn't quite catch it. I was kind of not paying attention, but I think they were saying that the amount of money that they were able to make on used car sales had dropped.
Yeah.
Right.
And the one thing they did say on the call, and they've said this before, is that services and other business is really there to support the sales of autos and the total cost of ownership for their customers, so that they're not necessarily looking to maximize the profit in that business.
Right.
Something above break even is good there.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So those are the buckets of cold water. There's a few more that we could talk about. And if you just look at the company as an auto business, it doesn't look great.
Right.
Okay. But now let's talk about energy a little bit. As you know, I track reported revenue in energy versus what I call indicative revenue,
Right.
which is reported plus the change in deferred revenue as well as the unsatisfied performance obligations. And there's been quite a difference you can see between the reported and the green bar versus the indicative, the yellow or the orange bar.
So
Um,
on the green bar, would it be reported and or recognized? Is recognized even, I mean, that's kind of an accounting term. Is that a better way to think of the green bar?
yeah, it's the revenue that they're allowed to recognize per accounting rules, which is what they report.
Okay.
So similar, I think, in that sense. They recognize the revenue on the megapacks and other storage products deployed and sold. But Megapack is particularly challenging because they recognize revenue over periods of time
Mhm.
under the percentage of completion method. So they're not, when they install a Megapack, that happens over, a number of quarters. And they recognize some revenue at different stages along the way.
Right.
So it is helpful to look at this indicative revenue because it does give us a little bit of a clue about what the future trend of revenues might be.
Mhm.
And in past quarters, the yellow bar has been growing faster than the green bar. And this quarter, the gap closed a little bit. The green bars kind of accelerated. Okay, which is fine. Again, we should expect some lumpiness in these measures too.
Sure.
But the fact that both bars are growing is a good sign. And some pretty healthy numbers there.
Right.
Now, here's the status of their total deferred revenue and unsatisfied performance obligations. We're now at about $9 billion.
Hmm.
And that's all revenue that will flow through the income statement at some point.
And did we decide in an earlier session, or maybe it was, I can't remember, that this is potentially mostly profit?
Well, I'm skeptical about
All
that.
right.
The accounting rules generally say that you need to match your revenues with your expenses.
Okay.
And so I'm highly skeptical that they're booking all the expenses up front, and then when they recognize this, that they get to enjoy just pure profit.
Right.
And I think the fact that the margins on energy went down this quarter, I think is some indication of that they're not just booking this as pure profit,
Okay. All right.
which frankly kind of flies in the face of accounting rules,
Right.
in my opinion. Now, there's some folks in our community, Bradford and Larry, that's done some work on this. They've looked at this a little bit more deeply than I have.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, I think that whether this is pure profit or not, which I don't think it is, it's still a good thing that it's
Right.
growing. Yeah. Now, one offsetting thing in the energy business is the sort of the average selling price or the price they get per megawatt hour deployed. And that's been going down pretty drastically. And this is great for customers. It's great for humanity. We get more of these megapacks deployed.
Mhm.
It's a negative as far as Tesla's financials.
Mhm.
So while they have more megawatt hours or gigawatt hours deployed, the revenue that they derive from that is going down over time.
Hmm.
Okay, much like the cost of EVs is coming down, well, the cost of these big, massive battery storage devices is coming down as well.
Now, how do we figure that out compared to the power walls?
Well, it's all lumped in here.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
the
this,
average between power walls and
yeah,
megapacks is coming down. Okay.
yeah. Now the power walls, I think, is a fairly small percentage of the total. I mean, still significant,
Right.
but most of what's driving this, I believe, is probably the megapack pricing.
Okay.
Okay. Um, and you look at the left side of this chart, there's some pretty crazy prices
Right.
just a few years ago.
Yeah, and
But
this has been one that's always confused me a little bit. If the TAM is unlimited and if they're battery constrained, it would seem like these margins would be higher.
yeah,
Generally speaking, if you have massive TAM and you are probably not the only one constrained by battery supply, it would seem like you'd be able to charge more. But I don't know. I don't quite get what's going on there.
yeah, it's an interesting observation, isn't it? I saw some numbers recently that put the total deployments of battery storage products, grid scale battery storage last year to 200 gigawatt hours.
Mhm.
And Tesla, I believe, did 30% of that.
Hmm.
So let's say 30% market share globally.
Right,
Now, most of that I think was deployed in China, and of
right.
course, Tesla opening up their mega pack factory in China will help address that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it is a competitive market.
Right.
Tesla does have to respond to that. Are the other companies as battery constrained as Tesla is? Probably, but perhaps not.
Well, we do know that CATL and BYD make their own batteries. So that might mean that they're able to, there's also this problem of we need it, but we can't plan for it unless we know we can get it. Chicken and egg problem.
Yeah,
So utilities that want to plan for the batteries need to also be able to plan for transformers and utility hookups and all the rest. And all the transformers and utility hookups are a problem right now. So then you can't place the order because you can't plan on the hookups and or you don't know when you're going to get the batteries. So
right.
as some of that smooths out, it might improve the ability to the TAM is one thing, the addressable TAM is one thing. The immediately addressable TAM might be completely different.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And it's a very long cycle business.
Yep.
So Tesla probably has pretty good visibility about what's coming. They may not know exactly what quarter the orders will be placed, but I'm sure that they have discussions with their customers well in advance, and they know sort of, the direction of this business. So the fact that Elon mentioned, I believe he mentioned, although no one asked him about this, that they're building a third mega pack factory.
He said it.
Yeah, right. I looked at the transcript. Now there is a little bit of ambiguity there,
Oh,
perhaps, but it does look pretty clear that he was referring to a third megapack factory
uh-huh.
and not just a third factory in China or something that some people have suggested it might be.
Oh,
Um, but that'll be exciting to learn more about that, about where that is and what their plans are there.
right. And that would say two things. Number one, it would say that they are seeing enough business out there to create the third factory, and two, that whatever constraints they see in batteries right now,
Yeah.
they anticipate that will be at least resolved enough to produce a third factory.
Now, are the constraints on the battery side, Randy, with the vehicles or with the battery storage devices? Because they're
Well,
different
it,
batteries.
it seemed that what he said was what we're having to do is decide between fixed and mobile.
Yeah.
So they are there's a lot of flexibility about which way they can go with some of these batteries,
Hmm.
and so they're making choices. And I said this morning in my show that may explain why the semi truck has been slow to come to market. Might also explain why the Cybertruck is not ramping as fast as we thought it would.
Right. Yeah, there seems to be some constraint there on the 4680s. Yeah. They did announce in the earnings report, by the way, I'm not sure if everybody saw that, but they're making enough 4680s to make 2,500 Cybertrucks a week.
Right.
Now, if you're also putting those in the semi, it doesn't leave much available for semi.
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to get back to that on another call. I
Yeah.
need to keep with them.
Yeah. Okay. Sticking with energy, here's the chart of gross margins over time. So that 30.5% in Q3 looks like a little bit of an aberration right now.
Right.
Perhaps Q4, the 25 is an aberration. Well, that remains to be seen. So we'll follow that very closely. But overall, the energy business, you can see, certainly is holding pretty steady at a nice high gross margin.
Right.
And here is the cumulative gross margin dollars since the third quarter of 2016. So energy is contributing nicely to Tesla's overall profitability now, as Tesla's most profitable business unit in terms of gross margins.
And by the way, I don't think anybody's ever said this out loud that I've heard. 25% on $1 million product is good margins.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a lot of companies would be happy. I've done deals and OEM deals, where I was happy to make 10%.
Hmm.
Because you don't have, when you get into those kind of numbers, you don't have you don't have to apply as much overhead to that giant one-time sale as you do to a bunch of small sales. So 25% on a product that has this kind of volume and this kind of unit dollar amount, this is very good.
Very good. And also considering the future service revenue opportunity as well as time goes on. And then, of course, the ability to use AutoBidder
Right.
and get some, AI powered revenue, which would have, probably 95% margins attached to it.
Right.
Right. So you would think that Tesla actually would be heavily incentivized to produce as many megapacks as they can, not worry about near-term profitability. Now, perhaps we're seeing some of that in terms of the price per megawatt hour coming down.
Yeah.
Right. But still, the company is able to make pretty nice gross margins on that strategy.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this actually was Tesla Energy's record quarter in terms of gross margin dollars.
Right.
Okay. Um, okay, let's switch to services and other. This is something I calculate every quarter. It's the quarterly revenue per vehicle in the services and other business. And I take the quarterly revenue for this business line and I divide it by the cumulative deliveries that Tesla's had all time.
Hmm.
over 7 million vehicles.
Mhm.
Now, I recognize that not all those vehicles are still on the road today. Many of them have, expired one way or another. But anyway, just for consistency, I'm just using that number. So I suppose this revenue per vehicle could be a little higher than what I'm showing here at $400 per quarter per vehicle.
Right.
And it seems to be trending down a little bit. So maybe if I made an adjustment for the number of vehicles out there, maybe it would hold steady at about $500 per quarter per vehicle.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. So that's including supercharging. That's including just the maintenance and service. And I guess also built in here, I guess, is used vehicle sales, which might muddy the waters a little bit,
And insurance.
and insurance.
Oh,
Yep.
and what do you call it? The $10 a month, I guess maybe FSD subscriptions might be in here.
I think that's in the auto business.
Think so.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't put that as part of the revenue from the sale.
I believe that flows through the auto line.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And then here's the gross margins in that business, which were trending up nicely up until Q4. So again, if you are an auto analyst and you care about auto margins, profitability, and everything else, this quarter looks pretty brutal.
So I had this, one of those moments this morning as I was getting, working on my shows and whatnot. Elon has been talking about this for a very long time, maybe, 2 years, that none of this matters. And I know that you and I both enjoy doing all this stuff, and
Yep.
the audience enjoys hearing it and seeing it. And it's super interesting. But once Robotaxi happens, all of
Ran-
this is
Randy, you're getting ahead of me. I'm still throwing buckets of cold water.
all right. Never mind. All right, that's
All
really
right.
this is great. Hey,
We're
this
getting into lukewarm water at this point, though, because we can see here that even services and other with its, declining margin this quarter
right,
is still making advances towards becoming profitable since 2016.
right, right.
So even that business is making some nice headway.
I could make an argument, and I have made the argument before, that services and others at any point that they decide to turn it on and get serious about it, it could be a huge moneymaker.
Yeah, at the point perhaps they're less worried about driving auto sales, but their comment about total cost of ownership, I think, is an important one to think about,
Right.
particularly when it comes to supercharging.
Mhm.
But yeah. All right. So sticking with our buckets of cold water theme on
Right,
margins,
right,
gross profit margin, we talked about that. The blue lines come down.
right.
Net profit margin, the dark green, actually was flat,
Hmm.
but that was boosted by the Bitcoin gain.
Ah, yes, okay.
So if we take that out, if we just look at operating margin, that
Right.
went down. Okay. So if they didn't make the change towards the fair market accounting for digital assets, their effectively the net margin would have gone down this quarter.
Mhm.
Okay. And then here's, Jeff Lutz focuses on this, the cost to make the vehicle versus the average selling price.
Right.
Both went down, but
Mhm.
more in the favor of the consumer.
Mhm.
This was a squeeze towards Tesla's profitability.
Sure.
The winners here are the consumers. They get to buy vehicles that are even cheaper.
Mhm.
And the average selling price now for a Tesla vehicle is less than $40,000 on average. And that's even with the addition of, the higher price Cybertruck. So you can see that the other vehicles are coming down pretty rapidly. But they're also making nice progress on reducing their costs.
Right.
And that's great.
Yep, yep, yep.
So Tesla now, the gross profit per vehicle now is about $5,000.
Hmm.
So not too bad. And relative to other car companies, this actually is a pretty outstanding number.
And
Uh,
and again, the thing that is huge, 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 that will change pretty radically, apparently this summer, is that FSD purchases are in this number. So we maybe have a 10% uptake now. We don't know, 15%, whatever it is, but whatever that number is, we don't I don't know about subscriptions, you could be right, but we do know that the FSD purchase is in the sale of the car, and
mhm.
the cost of goods, which is almost zero, is also there. So this $5,000, at least partially, is due to some FSD sales. If FSD sales go to 20% or to 30% or to 40% of the vehicles, this number would jump radically.
Yeah. And I think to this Q3 number that bumped up from 5,900,
Uh-huh.
this was due to revenue recognition on the FSD,
Okay. Hmm.
or a good chunk of that was.
Right.
So, yeah, that's definitely part of what's going on here. Um, all right. Then from a, we talked about this before in terms of free cash flow, but here's a chart of the cumulative free cash flow since 2012,
Mhm.
$15 billion now.
Mhm.
So it's difficult, again, as difficult as the environment has been for Tesla's margins and profitability and auto, sales, number of units, the company is still making money after paying for its massive capex.
Right.
And this is actually pretty astonishing. It's a very well managed and run company from that respect. Okay. By the way, here is their total capex and R&D
Mm.
over the same time period. We've now spent over $70 billion,
Mm.
right? If we just look at capex, it's 50.
Hmm.
And you can see that, recent years that's accelerated. It's becoming a bigger and bigger number.
Right.
And then one thing that we talked about before is the regulatory credits. And if you compare CapEx with the amount that receive in regulatory credits, I've always positioned this as though the Tesla's competition is helping fund their CapEx budget.
Right.
And since 2018 now, that's to the tune of $10 billion or about 26% of their total CapEx.
Nice.
I don't know of any other business
Yeah.
industry where your competition pays you money so that
Uh,
you can build more factories to compete against them.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is a dream, and certainly, many analysts believe this will go away one day.
Sure.
Although, showing no sign of doing so, and in fact, it's expanding. But this is a pretty sweet situation that appears to be the case now for some time to come,
Yep. Yeah.
right?
Very good. Very
And
nice.
this is again totally separate on what Trump may or may not do with the vehicle tax credits. This is something entirely different.
Yes. There are at least 11 states, 12 states that have their own system, and then there's several countries that have some kind of a ZEV credit.
Yeah, and that's the important thing here too, is even though the United States may make some changes, this is also a global thing.
Right.
Although many of them apparently sort of model it after California and what they're doing. So if something happened in the US, particularly in California, there could be some big changes to this, and we do expect this will go away over time.
Hmm.
But when it does, it won't matter anymore.
No.
Okay. All right. You and I talked about a mystery a few weeks ago about the number of Tesla superchargers.
Hmm.
And we said that we'll find out at the end of the quarter exactly how many they have.
Right.
If you recall, Randy, Tesla at the end of the year said that they had 67,000 plus superchargers.
Right.
And then 6 days later, they said that they had added 3,600 in the quarter. And I did the math, and that would be 66,000 plus superchargers. So how do you think the number actually was? What do you think it actually was
At the end of the first quarter.
at the end of the fourth quarter, end of the
First
year?
quarter. Oh. Um,
We had two numbers, 67 plus or 66,000 plus.
hmm. I don't know. I'm hard pressed to tell you. Probably more.
65,
Yes.
495 is the official number. So why did the Tesla supercharging account say 67,000 plus? 6 days later, basically give us a number that was 66,000 plus, only to actually report yesterday 65 and a half. I've
Uh,
asked for clarification on this. I haven't received it yet, but it's still a puzzle, still a mystery to me as to why we have different numbers here.
so did they take some superchargers out in order to put in the new mega chargers for the semis or
I don't
'cause-
know.
yeah. Mhm.
I don't know. Anyway, with the mystery being what it may, they're still growing the number of superchargers worldwide. Whether it's 65,500, 66, or 67, doesn't really matter a whole lot. The growth trajectory is still there.
Right.
So I don't want to be too critical of Tesla on this. Yeah. Um, the rest of my charts are from the deck from yesterday. We talked about the average cost of goods sold per vehicle
Right.
reached an all-time low. And just wait to see what that number is once the Cybercab starts to be produced.
And they mentioned that this was the most of the reduction was due to some benefits in raw material costs.
Yeah. And this was, I thought, a really interesting table that maybe didn't get a whole lot of play was the advancements in vehicle technology from the Cybertruck
Mhm.
and how it will be used in future vehicles. Now, the stainless steel exoskeleton appears to be a one-time thing with the Cybertruck. They may not continue that, and the air bending manufacturing process associated with that. But everything else that's in the Cybertruck, um, it looks like it's going to carry forward. And one I found kind of interesting is rear wheel steering.
Yeah.
Do you need that in a Cybercab? What vehicle would you use that for? I guess the Robovan,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's a puzzle. What else is coming out, Randy, that you would need that for?
Well, what's the big advantage to rear wheel steering? Tighter turning radius?
Yeah.
Is that the big advantage?
It says improves turning radius at low speeds and increases stability at high speeds.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, then I guess every car,
I suppose. And maybe that's the plan. That's interesting.
because the Model Q we were reporting this morning because nobody else is that they said there will be models
Yeah.
plural. And so we're trying to figure out what models really means. And I'm speculating it will be a hatchback, a minivan, like a six-passenger minivan, and a small truck.
Those would all be great. It would all be great. Yep. So that's good. Couple images of the new Model Y. It's exciting to see that. It's amazing that they're attempting to build this out of 4 factories at the same time globally. I don't know any other automaker that's ever done anything like that. Of course, there may be some hiccups. We'll see how this goes. It appears that the first quarter is going to be kind of a throwaway quarter with respect
Right.
to auto deliveries and that kind of thing, but that's okay. And as AJ has pointed out, that the launch version of the Model Y actually may be quite profitable because they're bundling in the FSD with it. You
Right.
have to buy FSD.
Right.
So that may offset the lack of volume, the lack of units being sold. So we'll have to see. The Q1 actually may not be terrible.
And it looks like, if China is any example, and we don't have any numbers out of the United States or Europe yet, but if China is any example, and if the Cybertruck is any example, I think people are going to be, I think we may find that there's an awful lot of people that buy the launch version.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still a very reasonably priced vehicle, and for what you get. The Model Y that I purchased for my family in 2021, I think it was, I think was over 70 some thousand dollars.
Hmm. I think ours is
So
over,
this is looking pretty attractive.
yeah, I think ours is over 60. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so anyway, that's good. The image here, the semi factory is great. That's great to see them making progress on this. I do hope that they can produce enough batteries so that they can produce a lot of semis. The world needs semis. These are very traditional semis are very polluting vehicles.
Right.
So the more we replace and the faster we do it, the better off we all are. Um, and it's right next door there to a battery factory. So hopefully they can get things squared away. This is the Gigafactory in Shanghai.
Mhm.
There's some other, buildings being built here. I'm not sure what's going on here. There's more clearing behind here, so it'd be interesting to see what else is built here. This is the Gigafactory Shanghai in the background,
Right.
and here's the new mega factory. So,
Yep.
all
Yep.
right. They're actually starting to build them already. And they said that earlier that in Q1 they'd be
Right.
building them and deploying them or shipping them out.
Mhm.
It'll be interesting to see how much more productive the Shanghai megafactory is versus Lathrop.
Right.
I would expect that it will be. Certainly having a new facility will help, but also the Chinese seem to be able to produce things at massive scale better than we can in the US, even using the same company. Lithium refinery started production in 2025. Things are coming together there. Um, I guess we now have to celebrate Spodumene Day.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll have to put that on my calendar going forward. And it looks like it requires quite a few chefs to celebrate Spodumene Day
Yeah.
in style.
Uh-huh.
And I think this is pretty cool, and we'll transition to Optimus. This is the 50,000 GPU training cluster at Gigatex. It's called Cortex, and it's kind of a beautiful sight, row upon row of GPUs.
Yeah.
Now, Elon said something on the call, I think that was one of the most bullish things ever for NVIDIA. He talked about spending $500 billion on compute.
Yeah.
Right. Now, hopefully that is a lot of Tesla's own dojo equipment, but I'm sure NVIDIA will be a big beneficiary of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we threw a lot of buckets of cold water today, Randy, but the call actually really was, I think, one of the most amazing earnings calls that I've heard from Tesla yet.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not just focused on autos, not just focused on energy and some of the lumpiness there, Elon spent a lot of time talking about Robotaxi and rolling that out in Austin in June.
Mhm.
I can guess where a lot of people in the Tesla community will be going for their summer holidays, or at least a summer trip. But Elon, I think more importantly, spent most of the call or the most time he's ever spent on talking about Optimus.
Mhm.
And that actually was pretty amazing and pretty exciting and kind of rewarding for me because he highlighted a lot of the things that I've been saying now for a couple of years in terms of, the future production, the future revenue, pricing of Optimus. Obviously it's going to be market pricing. It's whatever the market will bear. It has to be,
Well, yeah,
right?
because as we've pointed out, and I pointed out a couple of times already, is he doesn't like to see a middleman get involved and skim off some of the
No,
cream. It's better for the stockholders to get that cream. So,
that's
no,
right.
that was probably my favorite moment was when he
Yeah.
said, "No, market price." Yeah.
Yeah. And just the conversation about the production and so on, it was really quite interesting, quite fascinating. I'm not sure we have time to really get into it here today, but the the realization I think that's slowly creeping in with many people, maybe not on Wall Street yet, but just how with reasonable numbers on Optimus at any kind of reasonable scale, how staggeringly massive that is of an opportunity for Tesla,
Especially
right?
especially if it's rented.
Yeah. And and as I think about, as a potential consumer buying an Optimus, frankly, I would like to rent it because it would reduce the upfront cost. It's something I wouldn't have to finance, right? And you could probably justify the expense if it just becomes another monthly expense.
Right.
And also, you don't have to worry about how long Optimus might last.
Right.
My Optimus breaks down for whatever reason, needs new parts, Tesla would just take care of it.
Right.
In fact, the Optimus probably just walks out the door one day, gets in a cybercab, and 3 seconds behind him, another one arrives.
That's right. That's
He just
right.
subs himself out. It's like a hockey team. They just jump on the ice when they're ready to go.
Precisely. Precisely.
Yeah.
Yes. And been trying to suss out, people's opinions on this kind of stuff by talking about all the things that an Optimist would be able to do for a family. And, people who have any dependent living in their home, whether it's a senior or whether it's a child, or even whether it's a dog or a cat. Not so much
Yeah.
a cat. Cats, you can pretty much, you don't have that much work to do. But with dogs, with dependent children, with dependent seniors, or a special needs child, adult child, um, the value of the Optimus would be paid for easily.
Hmm.
Just it wouldn't even be close. So
Wouldn't even be close.
whether it's $30,000, one time, whether you pay $500 a month for for payments, or whether you rent it for $600 a month. I mean, any one of those would clearly pay all the costs just in the child care, adult senior care, whatever, savings.
Well, and think about too the opportunity with Robotaxi. So right now, most of us, own or lease vehicles,
Right,
right? We have the cost of insurance.
right,
And so eventually with Robotaxi, we would be able to forego all that and just use transportation as a service.
right,
And maybe we would save, $5,000 to $7,000 a year.
right.
Well, it would be a no-brainer to put that savings towards Optimus,
That's right.
right? So Tesla has a solution on both sides for you, right? Move to
Exactly.
the Robotaxi network, save the money that you save gets deployed into Optimus.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
if the Robotaxi is a little slow, you just have Optimus carry you.
Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, yeah. Like you have four Optimus carry you on a shield down your neighborhood. Yeah, yeah. My neighbors already think of me in a strange way for having a Cybertruck. So if I did that, that would be fun.
That would be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. You would definitely be the standout in your area. So
Hmm.
what do you think, CERN? Okay, so I'm going to be taking so much credit for the 2026 thing because I started talking about 2026 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And that would be the year. That would be the year when it all came together.
Yep.
Elon
You
is
were right, Randy.
now stated it. But one of the other things that came out of that 2026 is the year when it all comes together was 2025 would be the year when the street gets it. So I'm going
Maybe.
to now defer to you as the expert. When is the street going to get it this year?
Well, by their questions on the earnings call, they haven't gotten it yet, right? We're asking about LiDAR
And
and so
even
on.
the follow-up, some of the what do you want to call it, punditry that came out this morning with statements.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think they've gotten it yet. They're still stuck in their old ways, looking at the auto business and margins and all that kind of stuff. And that will continue. I think the first sign is perhaps when we start to see some reassignment of analysts. That's
Oh,
really what we need. We need folks at Morgan Stanley or whatever firm we care about to reassign Tesla to a different analyst,
mhm, mhm,
right? To a tech analyst that understands technology, not an auto analyst.
mhm, mhm.
Now, I'm not picking on Adam Jonas
Sure,
specifically. I'm
sure.
just saying that we need to see some of that, right? That would be the first sign for me that they're starting to get it.
Mhm.
Because I think tech analysts are perfectly capable of understanding what's happening here.
I'm really, this is an honest question because I really don't know. I haven't been doing this long enough, but I had somebody this morning mirror my recent opinion that Bank of America has some great analysts, and that they tend to really look at what Bank of America says as their number one go-to. And Bank of America, other than Dan Ives, was really the first one to mention Optimus and
Mhm.
seriously mention Robotaxi back just before the election. And that, I'm sorry, just after the election, about a few weeks after the election. So we had this leg up from the election, and then it kind of flattened out. And then the Bank of America statement came out, and we went up another leg. And I at the time said, I think that B of A thing gave everybody in the industry permission to start talking about Optimus and Robotaxi. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think we're going to see a number of different legs, so to speak, or leg ups and the potential on the stock. So for example, when Tesla starts to produce some of them at some scale, and even if they're deploying them in-house, if we get any numbers around cost savings or anything about that, that gives Wall Street something to model.
Right.
If we get any sort of external sales, that
Mhm.
gives Wall Street something to model, right? So we at each of these different steps along the way, it'll give these analysts something to kind of dig into.
Right.
None of them really right now are willing to kind of take a stab in the dark, and to the extent some of them have, they're so ridiculously low, it's not even worth looking at. And we've discussed some of those.
Right. Right.
Herbert and I did a video on the Citigroup report that was just ridiculous. terms of looking at their projections for robots of all kinds out to 2050,
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, I remember
right?
that.
So it's not really even worth the paper it's written on, in my opinion. Um, I mean, there's some nuance to that. They did do some good work, but their work on humanoid robots is severely lacking.
Yeah, I mean, people, it just blows my mind. You got Elon, who has this track record now. I mean, nobody has a track record ever that I know of in history of just win, 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 win. I mean, everything he touches just happens, and the stuff that people say is impossible.
But it's late, Randy. It's late, and that discounts everything. It makes it all worthless.
I see. And so you would think that these analysts would at least start from his premise of 25 trillion and of 100 billion and of 7 billion, units as being the initial TAM. At least start there as
Yeah,
something to argue against, as something to say, oh no, it's Elon says it'll be 7 billion, but we can only find 1 billion or something, but they
right.
don't even start
No, they don't.
there.
Yeah. So they'll get there eventually, but it may sort of have to hit them in the face at various times along the way.
Right.
Seeing, a few hundred robots operating autonomously in a Tesla factory, that will be an interesting moment, right? And hopefully then the analysts start asking some questions about that. Oh, how much work are they doing? How much are they saving you? Et cetera, et cetera. And then they can do some math and extrapolate a little bit.
Right.
Seeing the video yesterday about the vehicles driving off the assembly line and parking themselves at the loading docks, right? Again, right there, you can do some math about the cost for those workers to drive the vehicles and how much cost savings there is.
Right.
And okay, maybe it's only $25 a car,
Right.
but still you can do the math on that and you can look at that and say, okay, that's great. And so the same opportunity will present itself, I think, with the robots. And then, of course, get the robots into Tesla's suppliers and then the downstream cost savings that come from that. So we're going to have different opportunities, I think, as this year progresses and into next year to start getting some real numbers to play with.
Yeah, and I've said this over and over again on my channel. I'm going to repeat it again because I just think that most people don't know this, okay? And I don't even think the analysts know it, all right? My little company, all right, a $5 million sale business. Okay, that's all. That's what our total sales were. Now that's it's not a tiny business, but it's a small business.
Mhm.
To spend 100, and this is 25 years ago, to spend $100,000 on a piece of automation equipment was nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was an easy. If I could prove out that it would save me money within 2 years, it would pay for the employees or whatever that it would replace in 2 years. You just write the check. The bank will say absolutely. Well, if it doesn't, it could be like 3 or 4 years, and the bank will still let you write the check. Okay, but if it's
Yeah.
2 years, no problem. And I would usually even go after 1 year, a 1 year payback. But
Mhm.
$100,000 gives you a 1 year payback in those days if you eliminate 3 employees.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, 3 employees. Yeah. So
Yeah. So you
I
do
think
that all day long.
so when you're talking about Optimus costing $100,000, people, $100,000. No, that would be nothing.
Mhm. Yeah. And as you mentioned, for a business, that's nothing, particularly a business that's running multiple shifts. It's
Right,
absolutely nothing.
right,
Right. In the home, it's a different story.
right,
And I've said this, the sales of bots in the homes will really only take off once there's truly massive production of these things. They're not supply constrained. They're not production constrained. Get the cost down. That's when that will really take off. But before that, there's plenty of opportunity in selling into business.
And again, even with the homeowner, there'll be a skim the cream time.
Yeah.
Maybe even the first year when they rent them for 70,000 a year or sell them for 200,000, there will still be people, individual homeowners who will buy one that they could afford 120,000 for a Cybertruck.
It's
That's
the ultimate status symbol, Randy. If we thought the Cybertruck was a status symbol for the few months that it was, you saw Pharrell and you saw other,
right.
stars driving it. just think what the bot will be as a status symbol.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. All right. So you think it'll be driven by news or by visuals, by maybe an event that will be, and we'll see various legs as the investing public gets this part or that part or the other part.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Wall Street has very clearly shown that they lack any imagination,
Any imagination. Yeah.
right? And they almost come to the party kicking and screaming. We saw that with NVIDIA a few years ago
Yeah.
when Jensen was talking about for months and years beforehand about how this AI wave was coming.
Right.
They completely ignored him. They sold the stock down because of the weakness um, in their gaming market,
Yeah.
right? And then we're surprised for 8 straight quarters about how strong the AI revenue was.
Right.
So that's Exhibit A in terms of, hey, they were forewarned. Jensen told them in no uncertain terms what was coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And Elon is telling us in no uncertain terms what is coming. So ignore that if you want, and that's fine. You can call that conservative. You can call that whatever you want. But the reality is that these guys have told us and are telling us what's coming.
All right. Well, with that, I will tell people that what's coming is the end of this show. So, Cern Basher, as always, we're thrilled to have you on, and I'm really enjoying the addition to your flower pot back there. Your Optimus is exclaiming victory, exclaiming that he was also stoked by the earnings call.
He's talking about an epic 2026
An epic
and a
20.
ridiculous 2027 and 2028.
We should write that down. We need to embroider, have somebody do one of these little things you put on your wall that has that epic 26 and a ridiculous 27.
Well, I do have some wall space behind me. I could do that with. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yours is taken up with some other important things, but I've got plenty of real estate back there.
Nobody's buying my books anymore. Maybe I could put up a plaque there, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's going to be exciting. And again, Optimus is all that really matters to Tesla long term. Robotaxi is huge, but it will pale in comparison to the Optimus opportunity.
And even energy will be a rounding error. Yeah.
And energy is critical for the world, for humanity, but from a financial standpoint for Tesla, it's a rounding error going at some point in the future, yes.
Yes. Well, with those wonderful thoughts moving around in our minds, Cern, I will say adieu to you and to all of you. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.